Hey everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to discuss the end of another NC State season. NC State women's basketball has its season come to an end in the round of 32 of the NCAA tournament in the Ann Arbor region. The Wolfpack obviously knocked off number 10 seed Tennessee in the first round and then had to take on the Michigan Wolverines, the 2 seed in one of the Fort Worth region or one of the Fort Worth sections of the bracket, and fought for a lot of the game, and then things just got away from the pack in this one, and they end up losing 92 to 63. But a major reason for the collapse was NC State was without junior guard Zoe Brooks in this game after she suffered something along the lines of it was a plantar fascia injury in that Tennessee win. She left the game in the third quarter and didn't return. And so, NC State was playing down what I think many or a player that I think many people would argue is its best player and certainly its most experienced when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So no Brooks in the fold. It pushed Zam Jones and then freshman guard Kaishi Lunan into much, much larger roles. Jones was ready for it. She had a 30-point performance in that first game and carried over some of that success into this one. Started a little slower, but ended up scoring 16 points and had 9 assists. However, turnovers were the bane of NC State's existence in this game. They turned the ball over 22 times in this one, and the Wolverines were able to turn that into 35 points, and NC State lost by 29 points. So essentially, if NC State is able to cut down on those turnovers, this is a very different game. A lot of those came in the second half. I believe 12 of them did. And Michigan really, really took advantage in that half, scoring 23 of those 35 points off turnovers in that period. So it just got away in a hurry. NC State was within, I believe, 3 points in this at halftime. I could be right, it could be two. I can't exactly remember, and I'm not good at math, so don't get mad at me if I'm doing that a little wrong. But this game was within reach. It was within reach for a large section of the third quarter before things got away in a hurry there and ultimately ended up with a much uglier loss than I think Wes Moore would have liked for this season to end on and obviously his players. So, NC State, where do they go from here? The way Wes Moore was talking after the game, it sounds as though he'll be back for another season. There hasn't been much to indicate that he won't be, but he is on the older side, so it's always a possibility that he opts to retire at this point of his career. However, it does seem as though he's still hungry for an NCAA tournament run, and with Brooks getting injured, it definitely felt like this team had a lot of growing pains throughout the season. The season ends somewhat disappointingly, obviously. Not a lot of success in ACC play against the top tier competition. Didn't defend Reynolds Coliseum as well as Moore would have liked to. But still, this was a team that was in the NCAA tournament with a single digit seed in the fight against a 2 seed for at least half of the game. I think there's a lot of returning or potential talent that could return depending on NIL and things of that nature. But we'll have to see if NC State is able to retain some of these key players like a Zam Jones, like a Camille Pierre, like a Tilda Trieger heading into the next season. And if Moore is still in the mix, that's um, given his age, remains to be seen. If I had to guess currently, I would say yes, but I don't have the information there that's totally pertinent to that. I think, if I had to grade this season for NC State, given the history and the recent history, they were in the Sweet 16 a year ago. However, Moore had his concerns about this group being so young. I would say it's probably a B of a season. I'm sure he would say it was an F, given, how much how much success that this program has had in the last 5 years. And so they're just 2 years removed from that Final Four run. So I think, he obviously was very disappointed in the way that the season went and, kind of the lack of growth that some of his players experienced. And then to have it all unravel in a half with many of those issues showing up as Brooks could only watch from the bench was really frustrating for Moore in a lot of ways. So I would think, from a youth standpoint, this team had a lot to learn and it did show some growth, but there were still, issues that showed up a lot. And I think, the players after the game said, they have a lot to work on and this season's kind of a very nice blueprint and very nice starting point as to what those things that need to be worked on are. So I think, NC State will get back to Raleigh, reassess, figure out, what the future is for some of its key players and you go from there. You build from there. Certainly could be some transfer portal additions. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I anticipate this program looking much stronger a year from now with this group. I think these players learned a lot, and I think that they certainly have shown a willingness to get better under Moore and certainly a hunger to win more games, especially with Jones. I think she really wanted it in this NCAA tournament. She wanted to go on a run and be the face of that run, and obviously she came up short, but she played really, really hard in both of these games and showed that, she can be an alpha offensively for sure. That's all I got on this loss. Obviously, we'll talk more about the aftermath of the season in the next few days, as well as the aftermath of the men's season. Baseball season in full swing now for NC State. Lots of coverage of that coming up. And of course, NC State spring football and pro day coming next week. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.